Welcome everybody to another episode of the It Starts With You podcast with me, Sam Adams. I am very delighted to say I have a gentleman that I admire greatly um, with his message to the world, and I'm super excited to have him on the podcast today and that he agreed to be here. And that is the one and only Simon Alexander Ong. Good morning, Simon.
Morning, Sam. Great to be here on your show.
Thank you so much for agreeing to do it. I know you're a busy man. You, you've had a busy year, as we were just talking about before we started recording properly. Um, why don't you, rather than me introduce you, and I always do this with all the guests, to be honest with you, I get the guests to introduce themselves just in case I make a really crap job of it, which I probably would. And yeah, this is your moment to sell yourself a little bit, I guess.
Thank you. So I'll give a sort of high-level overview, and then I'm sure we can dive into any of those areas
Mm.
further as the conversation develops. I was born here in the UK to two Malaysian Chinese parents, and I had grown up with this mistaken belief that success was defined by my job title and the amount of money I earn. And so that naturally led me to the career options of being either a banker, a doctor, a lawyer, or an accountant. Very traditional jobs that were respected and paid a decent amount of money for your salary.
Mm.
But when I graduated from university in the middle of 2007, I started in the financial services industry a year before the
Mm.
global financial crisis swept across the planet.
Remember it?
It was a very volatile time for me, not just because of the global financial crisis, but because the company that I started my first job with was Lehman Brothers, which collapsed into
Ah,
administration around 14 to 15 months after I joined.
right.
And so I had faced an experience that I think most wouldn't face until later in their career. That
Mm.
was within the first year of my career. And it forced me to question the choices I was making and whether this was the version of success that I wanted.
Mm.
Because overnight, bankers were seen as evil. At the beginning, it was seen as an industry people aspired to get into. And
Mm.
overnight, suddenly, people just considered bankers as destroyers of the universe.
Yep.
And so it made me question my choices and whether I was pursuing a life that I wanted or a life for other people. So even though I spent nearly 10 years in that industry, in and out of jobs, everything from sales jobs to trading jobs to research, it started a thought process of asking myself what I wanted to do longer term.
Yeah.
And I spent the time outside of work on the weekends, in the evenings, in the early mornings, researching and exploring what I could do if I were to start my own business. And so in 2014, I enrolled with the Coaching Academy. It's an
Yeah.
institution that helps equip people with coaching skills and teach people how to use them in the workplace and also for their own business. And a couple of years later, I finished that, coming out with three qualifications. And then at the end of 2016, I handed in my resignation to completely exit the corporate industry and enter the world of business. And when I started, I was just coaching people one to one. So anybody and everybody that wanted to be coached, come my way. I would
Yeah.
build my experience. I would coach you so I could develop uh, my knowledge of how to be a better coach.
Mm.
I started doing that. I really enjoyed the impact I was having, an impact that was very different to just sitting in front of a screen in a high glass tower and not really seeing the impact of your work.
Mm.
And from there, things just started growing very quickly. One of my clients invited me to speak at an event that the company she was working with was hosting. And I went there, I did this event, they enjoyed it. And from there, I started to get invitations to speak at other organizations, to other conferences, and seminars. And that speaking
Mm.
led me to being interviewed on platforms like the BBC and Sky News. And in 2020, landing a book deal with the world's largest publishing house, Penguin, to share my work, Energize, with the world when it was published last year in 2022.
Yeah. Wow, what a wrap up. I definitely couldn't have done that. So I'm so glad I asked you to do it because yeah, I obviously know you as a personal development entrepreneur, a coach, an author, I know the book has won some awards as well. Is it the Business Book Award for Wellness and Wellbeing?
Yeah,
So
so one book of the year a few months back in the wellness and wellbeing category,
yeah,
which was fantastic recognition for the work that was put in, and it was just a
mm,
beautiful moment to share with those who have helped me get to that position.
yeah, no, amazing. And obviously, I mean, we met, I think, firstly probably on Clubhouse, I think.
Yeah, 2020.
Yeah, 2020. So that was when you got your book deal. That was how I sort of came across you, and then yeah, I think we just kind of connected through Clubhouse, like a lot of us did in that very weird and strange time. Um, so yeah, I got to know a lot more about you. But I guess um, you've kind of like summed up your journey a little bit to sort of what's got you to this point. And I think you've created quite a following now, and I see a lot of stuff around of people sharing Energize the book,
Mm.
and some of the the more the insights that people are gaining from it. I mean, what when you got to 2020 and Penguin came to you with the book deal, was the concept already there? Was this kind of garnered from your sort of years previous, I guess, from 2014, 2016 and on, that this was like what your core focus was around about energy and how we can use this resource for our development and for our happiness ultimately, I think is where you're heading with some of this energized stuff. What, in 2020, was the idea already there, or was it like, oh, great, I've got this book deal, but now what am I going to write about?
So I'll give a bit of background to how it happened because it wasn't as smooth as it may look from the outside.
Mm,
So in the middle of each year, so I would say end of July, August,
mm,
is when I take a step back and review the first half of the year, and then look at the second half of the year about what I want to focus on in terms of my priorities.
mm,
In August 2019, I was writing down a list of things. I want to focus on this. I need to spend more time doing this. And writing a book wasn't in the top three. Yeah,
right.
maybe it's top five, top six, but it wasn't top three. And a few weeks later, once I put this plan in place, I got an email from a boutique publisher that said, "Hey, Simon, we'd love to meet for coffee. If you haven't written the book already, we would love to explore this opportunity with you." So
Mm,
I went along, I had this meeting. And you know, when they say the universe works in mysterious ways, I think this was one of those events because even though I didn't go with this publisher, because I felt that the deal was a win-lose, it felt like a win for them and a lose for me. It kickstarted the idea of maybe, maybe now is the right time to explore the book side of things.
mm,
Because I had that email, I had that interest. Maybe that's the universe telling me I need to start thinking about writing a book.
yeah.
So what happened is that in the months after that meeting, I decided to try and build relationships with those in the publishing industry. So I
Mm.
said to myself, if I were to publish a book, which would be the publishers that I would love to work with? So I wrote the names
Yeah.
such as Hay House, Penguin, HarperCollins, Simon and Schuster, uh, Piatka's Books, all the sort of big, well-established publishers
Mm,
in our field. And then I went to their websites and I looked at all of the upcoming events for authors that were about to publish their book. And I would go to these launch events and try and connect with as many people as I could, especially in the front rows, in order to understand how the industry worked, what I needed to work on, what would increase my chances for getting a deal, what were
mm,
editors looking for, and then just connecting with them on LinkedIn, just connecting and building relationships with people in the industry. So
mm,
one, I could get to know more about how the whole thing worked, and second, they could get to know more about me
mm,
by following my content on social media. So once I started doing that, I I came even more inspired to put word out that I wanted to write a book. So towards the end of that year, and I think I deliberately did it on around Christmas or just before Christmas, because everybody's feeling happier and more joyful around Christmas. So I sent the messages out and said, "Hey, we met a few weeks ago, and you've seen some of my content, and I've gotten a bit more about the industry,
mm,
and I'd love to explore writing a book together with you. Would you be open to meeting for coffee in the new year?"
mm,
I sent them out, and I didn't attach myself to whether I would get a response or not. So
Mm.
up until that point, I didn't even have an idea of what I was going to write because I didn't know if anybody was going to respond.
Yeah.
And then January 2020 came, and the only response I got from all of that outreach was from Penguin.
Wow.
And in that email, the person I messaged said, Simon, are you free in the next couple of weeks? We'd love to catch up over at our headquarters in the Strand at the Penguin offices. And I said, sure. I went along, and I knew that as long as I could meet people in person, I could use my energy to share my work and what I wanted to speak about with them live. And
Mm.
so I went there, and she enjoyed the conversation. She loved what I was speaking about. And then she put me in touch with the woman that was leading the imprint that would publish my book.
Mm.
And so I had the chance to meet other people in the team, and they were convinced that this would be a good investment. And so it was at that point when I had to put a book proposal together that I thought to myself, what would I write about? And that's why I came up with the working title, Energy is Everything, which, as you know, when it was published, we edited it down to Energize.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. What a journey. And what I love your strategy, I guess, through all of that, and kind of knowing you as I do a little bit. I think
Mm.
you're very much like that. You're very strategic. I don't know, am I wrong? I don't know. I just sense that
I
from
think it's
you.
like the way I like to work is like, let's say I'm at point A and I want to get to point B.
Yeah,
The majority that I've noticed only see one way to get there.
yeah,
I've got to get an agent or I've got to send emails.
yeah,
Now, for me, if everybody's doing that, then my chances of succeeding is going to be very low.
yeah,
So what I love to strategize about is how can I get from A to B in a very different way that
mm,
not many people are doing.
yeah,
And so that served me really well, especially when it came to the marketing of the book. For example, I knew that I didn't have the following of some of these people that I look up to. So I said, that is my disadvantage that I don't have that size of a following. But
mm,
what is in my advantage? What is in my favor? Well, the fact that I can be creative. And so because I had a diverse network of people, I kept thinking to myself, how could I collaborate with people to showcase my book in a way that would get people talking? Now,
yeah,
in marketing, we call this unique talking points. How do we create unique talking points about our product or our service? So, in effect, our
mm,
prospects or our audiences become our marketers. They go out into the world, you should buy Simon's book or you should read it.
yeah,
Look, Simon just partnered with the world's best bar to create an energized cocktail. He put together one of the world's first book launches in the metaverse. And
yeah.
because you're sharing your message in a different way that is unique, it makes people take notice. And when
I
they take
love that.
notice, they share it on social media.
Yeah, I love that so much, Simon, what you've done. And obviously I know a little bit about it anyway, but the podcast is called It Starts With You. It's us about, it's like, it's that it starts with us, how our uniqueness is our greatness, right? And how we take responsibility for everything. And you've really sort of harnessed that in a different way by going, okay, I'm completely different to everybody else who seems to have done these books and great book launches. How am I different, and how can I use this uniqueness to get me to stand out? And I just love the way that you've gone about that, and created that buzz, because yeah, I noticed the metaverse stuff and everything like that.
It
Yeah.
really does start with you because I think that it's the power of perspective.
Mm,
When you know you have a disadvantage, so let's say you start a business and you say to yourself, well, hey, I don't have the marketing budget of a
mm,
Samsung or an Apple, that can put you down. That can
mm.
make you think that it's going to be impossible.
Yeah.
But actually, if you see what you lack as an advantage, then
Mm.
suddenly you realize it does begin with you.
Yeah,
Because what you
exactly.
then have is no choice but to think different and think creative. How can you
Yeah.
approach it in a way that doesn't necessarily require money? You know, we automatically think in order to market something, well, I've got to have money. But actually, some of the best marketing has happened without much money. Some of
Yeah.
it is free. So,
Because you have to get creative, don't you? It's your creativity that then has to kick in, which is clearly what you did.
yeah, I mean, one of the things I did, which anybody can do if you're launching a book, is I did this strategy called a book drop.
Mm.
I don't know if you've come across it before, but a book drop is
Yeah.
something I learned from a friend of mine in the US. And so in the 2 weeks after publication, I took a couple of hundred books. And I just went around London. Some friends of mine went around towns that they were living in, and we just dropped them on public transport, on park benches, on lots of random places that were for the public. And we were just watching on social media how people pick it up, because inside was a post-it saying, "I hope you enjoyed a book, buy," and then my handle on Instagram. And it was crazy how wide it went. There was even somebody that picked it up in London, brought it back home to their country in Spain. They live in Madrid, and then shared it that they picked this book up on public transport while visiting London as a tourist. And so just crazy in that 2 weeks, seeing how far and wide these books will travel.
I love that. Yeah, such great thinking. I really, really love it. Um, okay, I wrote down see what you lack as advantage. I
Mm.
absolutely love that line. So I'm taking that and I'm gonna be using that when I put the podcast out, because I absolutely love that. And it's so true, right? Because so often, we see what we lack as a disadvantage. It's like,
Mm.
oh, woe is me. Oh, I haven't got this. I can't do that. I had it weirdly with a client the other week, and they're an author as well, actually. Um, and they were just looking from a lack point of view as a disadvantage the whole time. And it's that whole flipping the script on that, isn't it? And it's like, well,
Mm.
actually, this is an opportunity for creativity. This is
Mm.
an opportunity for doing something completely different, because that's what's going to get you to stand out at the end of the day when you're in because let's be honest, most books and podcasts, for instance, that do really well are led by people that are very well known.
Yeah.
There's a lot of celebrities publishing books. There's a lot of celebrities now doing podcasts. So you've got to think outside the
Mm.
box, or disregard the box completely, to think, actually, how am I going to get noticed? How am I going to get from A to B in a different way to everybody else? And
Mm.
I see Energize and what you've done with Energize as a really great example of that. And of course, that's come, I'm sure, along with the book, it's got obviously some amazing reviews.
Yeah.
There's a lot that's come off the back of that in terms of speaking engagements and stuff like that. So it's been massively to your advantage. A massive win, I would imagine, for 20. Well, the book came out, but obviously, I guess this year has really been the year that's really sort of been quite buoyant for you.
Yeah, especially international. So last year, when it came out, a lot of the focus was on the UK,
Mm,
because that's where most of my audience lives. But this year, it's been much more international. So I've been slowly pushing into the US.
mm,
I've done so far this year San Diego, Los Angeles, and New York. I should be hopefully doing Austin in April next year in 2024. And so what it does is it helps get word out about my book.
yeah.
In San Diego, I did a workshop and a keynote, and we sold out of all the books. And so that means hopefully that the messages in my book will start spreading across businesses, and across organizations in corporate America.
Yeah, amazing. Absolutely amazing. Um, let's move on a little bit to, I guess, more of the concept of the book, and well, not the concept, sorry, the contents of the book.
Mm.
How people can, say someone hasn't read the book yet and they're listening to this podcast, they like the sound of you and what you're talking about. Why should they pick up this book? What's this book? What are the lessons that they're going to get from this book, I guess?
Sure. So if I had to summarize the book in one sentence, it would be this: energy management, not time management, is the key to productivity. So that's the essence of the book in one sentence. Now, the way I see energy is in four dimensions. You have physical energy, emotional energy, mental energy, and spiritual energy. Now, for many of us, we exclusively focus on physical energy when it comes to addressing our exhaustion. So, if
Yeah.
you're going through a period of feeling drained or feeling exhausted, chances are you respond by saying, or I need to get out more and move my body, or I need to change my diet. And that's why at the beginning of every new year, you see those sort of books do so well.
Yeah.
Diet books do you see uh, being passed around as gifts at Christmas? Or how many gym memberships are spoken about on social media? I'm going to join a gym, I'm going to join this class, I'm going to change my body. Or now this is going to be the year of more resting.
Mm,
What happens is that when we only focus on one dimension, we end up neglecting the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual. And those things are important if we want to thrive over the long term. To give you a brief overview of each, so physical energy, we all know, and I've mentioned the three pillars there. Mental energy is all about your mindset. It's about your ability to focus, especially since we live in a world that is full of distractions.
yeah.
The ability for you to tap into your creative energy. We'll have it. We
Mm,
were born creative individuals, but we end up suppressing it as we get older.
mm.
Emotional energy is all about the relationship that you have with yourself, other people, and the world around you. And spiritual energy is about meaning and purpose. In fact, when you look at the world around us, what you quickly notice is that many are exhausted, not because they are physically doing too much, but because one, they are doing too little of the things that bring them joy,
Oh,
and
yeah,
second, running someone else's race. So when
yeah.
you're doing something that goes against your values and does not allow you to express your gifts and talents with the world, you end up feeling a bit of tension inside your stomach. And that's when you are low on spiritual energy.
I love that. Yeah, I massively believe in that as well. It's like us, we've got to do these things that,
Yeah.
that we enjoy, right? Because it impacts our energy and our, I always say the essence, it's like those things that are the essence of us that really make, the mojo, whatever, all of these words you could use for it, but it energizes us. It's like, me coaching a client or speaking on stage, those things energize me. Like, it can be, what it's like coaching. It can, it's emotionally draining,
Mm.
physically draining, and it can be quite intense. But generally, for me, when I'm coaching or I'm speaking, I come off and I'm absolutely full of energy.
Yeah.
Like, and it stays with me. It's long lasting. These are the things that, I get a lot of bliss from, a lot of joy from.
Mm.
And of course, those things then have a knock-on effect when you go into other parts of your day and, other parts of your life, your family, other work areas that you have to take care of. You bring that energy into those other areas. This is how I see it. So that's why it's so important that we make sure that we have a good amount of those things that, energize us, that make us feel good, that,
Yeah.
lift our spirits, because it helps us manage the other areas of our life that kind of have to get done, but we don't always feel so inspired to do really.
Yeah, and here's the beauty of working on your own energy. When you feel energized, you begin to attract opportunities to you effortlessly.
Yeah,
And I think that Maya Angelou summed up this beautifully when she said, people may forget what you said, they may forget what you did, but they will never forget the way you made them feel.
yeah,
And it's all about energy because when you feel energized, you transfer that to someone that you are speaking to or audiences that you present in front of.
yeah,
And when that happens, people start buying more into your vision, into your products and your services. In fact, if you read any marketing book, they will always talk about the fact that we as humans, we make purchasing decisions based on emotion. And
yeah.
emotion is nothing more than energy in motion.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, bang on. I love that Maya Angelou quote. I've got it over there. I love a lot of Maya Angelou's books and words anyway. But yeah, she made a
Mm.
lot of sense to me. But yeah, absolutely. Energy, it's magnetizing, isn't it? It's like what we give out, we often get back. And
Yeah.
I always say to people, if you want more love, give more love. It's all
Mm.
energy. And that's the energy you've got to put into the world what it is you want to receive back in the world. Yeah, you're not going to get it every time, but you're going to get it more often than not.
Def-
Um, so be very mindful of what energy you're rocking up with. And when you walk in a room, right, it's like what energy you crossing the threshold with, when you go into the office, when you go into a room, you've got to be really mindful of that because, it's that moment, isn't it? When you first clap eyes on someone or someone walks in the room or your boss walks in the room, we have this ability to know straight away what this person might be feeling, where their energy levels are, where their mood might be at, just by the energy that they're giving off, right? And I think we don't pay enough attention to that. We don't realize that we're doing this, right? Because it's innate, right? We just all go around the world kind of knowing where someone's at, really, by just their energy when they walk in the room. We don't realize we've got this amazing skill. So how can we use it for the greater good? If we can notice that in someone else, we should be reminding ourselves that people are noticing in us. So we're
mm.
giving it more attention because we can use it to a greater benefit of ourselves and the greater benefit of our work and other people as well.
And this is what we call presence. This is
Yeah,
what
I
we
love
call
that.
presence. When you
Oh,
say his or her presence is just beautiful, what
mm.
we're really talking about is somebody's energy. And
Yeah, absolutely.
there's a great quote I share in a book that goes, energy introduces you before you speak. That
I
is why
love
so
that.
people are drawn to you. When you walk in a room, you can't explain it, but you're drawn to speak to someone more than someone else before they said a single word. And that's energy right there. There's something about this person that draws you into their field.
Yeah, that's so true. That'll be another quote I'm taking. I have this theory, though, not theory, but it's not a theory at all. I always say to people I talk about curiosity because,
Mm,
like, like you were just saying, when you go into a room, your energy introduces you, right? And you're drawn to the people that feel like they got your kind of vibe. Your vibrations are just energy, right? That's what, when we say that, a lot of people don't really get it. What you're talking about is vibrations, which is energy. And so we're drawn to those people who think, oh yeah, they're a bit of my vibe. But I'm always like saying, I'm curious about the person whose vibe I don't get because normally, naturally, we don't want to go and talk to that person who we feel like is a bit standoffish.
mm,
They're kind of a bit cool. They're not my vibe. But that is always the person that I want to go and have a conversation with because there is all, there is all that's what I'm probably going to learn the most.
yeah.
That's probably the most interesting person.
Mm,
And that tends to be my go-to when I rock up at a party or a meeting. It's like, okay, who's the person here that's probably got not my vibe at all? Because I always find with people like that, they're never what my first impression is.
mm,
They're just and they turn out to be really fascinating people. I don't
mm.
know why that is, and I'm just sharing you what I do, and because we're talking about energy, but it's generally the people that we're often, yeah, want to be drawn to those that are like us. That's natural as a human. We want that connection. But I'm here kind of waving the flag to say, but what about the ones that we don't feel drawn to? What about the ones we don't feel that vibration from when we walk into a room?
Mm.
I wonder what your experience is of that.
No, definitely. I mean, the thing is, often they can have stories that are rich in
Mm,
inspiration and knowledge. But as you say, they may not be the first people that people want to have a conversation with.
yeah.
And so there can be so much gold found by diversifying the type of conversations we have,
Mm.
and going off the beaten track a little bit, doing
Yeah,
something different.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So when it comes to energize and you've obviously summed it up quite well, but I guess why you to write this book?
Hmm.
Why this whole concept? What was it that got you? Because you said you didn't really know what you were going to write a book about in
Yeah.
2019, but obviously you've come up with
Hmm.
Energize. Was it a reflection looking back over all the work that you've done over the years of coaching that you got down to this point of Energize? And why you to write it, really? Why are you the person to talk about it?
Sure. So when I was thinking about what to write about, I kept coming back to this idea that energy is everything for three reasons. The first is my personal journey. After I finished up at Lehman Brothers, I moved to work in a hedge fund, and it was probably my worst career experience ever,
Mm,
because it was a very toxic environment. I was regularly shouted at by seniors.
mm,
I was treated like the T-boy. I had to get people's lunches. I had to do all the paperwork, the administration. I had to be the first one in the office, the last one to leave. It was a very toxic environment. And
mm,
it got to a point where the relationship I had with my girlfriend at the time and my health was on the verge of breaking down. I
right.
was physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually exhausted. And so the way I started to turn that around was first addressing my physical health. I
Yeah.
knew I needed to get better sleep. I knew that I could no longer sacrifice my health because I just wasn't going to gym. I wasn't doing any workout. I wasn't moving my body in any shape or form, just sitting in a chair looking at about 10 screens,
Yeah.
the financial markets. And I was surviving on junk food. I was surviving on takeaways. I remember one night I was in till uh, just shy of 11:30, and my girlfriend was very helpful. She came, even though she already finished work, she came to my office to drop off some food she picked up from the bagel factory, so I could have something to eat before I came home with her. And it was just ruining my life. And so to have
Mm,
gone from that point to what I now get to do, I really wanted to address that part of me. How I went from a place of literally no energy and almost to the point of burnout and breakdown in every way, to a point where I wake up feeling energized every day. So that was the first factor. The
mm,
second was me remembering that when I came down from stages I spoke at, I would often get people come up to me at the end, not with a question, but just wanting to share that Simon, I really enjoyed your energy on stage. And, you know, if I could have just a small percentage of the energy you shared, I could
Yeah.
accomplish so much with my life. And so I really want to speak to that too. You know, how could they themselves get to a point where they can share their energy with the world, how they can
Mm,
put more energy into their day-to-day lives. And then the third reason is just observation. You know,
mm,
I just began to observe how the most successful people knew how to manage their energy, that it was important for them to thrive over the long term. I mean, yes, you can work long hours, you can sacrifice lots of things, but often either that leads to divorce or that leads to burnout or that
yeah.
leads to breakdown in some form. I mean, yes, you might get successful in the process of it, but at the cost of your physical, mental, and emotional health.
Mm,
When I looked at those who succeeded, they made those things a priority. And then I guess why me? I think it's because of the work I was doing with my clients through coaching and the audiences I spoke to as a speaker and facilitator. I was able to see the impact of a lot of this work on those people's lives, from
mm.
messages I got, from comments on social media, from videos I put out on YouTube. And so I wanted to speak into a lot of this, that if it impacted the people I worked with lives, imagine what it could do for yours.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I really, really appreciate it. I'm conscious of time. I don't want to keep you all morning, but I do kind of want to go a little bit further if you're okay with that. Um, I guess a key part of the book is about protecting our energy, ultimately, isn't it? It's like, so where does someone start with that? What's the basics of protecting your energy, would you say?
Sort of the very first step is awareness,
Mm,
because you can't change what you're not aware of.
yeah.
So the very first step is to take a piece of paper,
Mm,
split it into two columns, and in one column, head it energize me, and on the other column, write drains me. And just write down all the activities, people, things, and places that either energize you or drain you. So you should come up with two lists in the columns. Once you've finished those lists, what you want to do is then honestly ask yourself, as a percentage of time in general, how much time do you spend focusing on each of those columns? And for a lot of us, it can be very eye-opening. I remember when I did something similar to this years ago, I realized that I was spending far too much time in the column doing things or being around people that drains me.
yeah.
And so my challenge then became, how do I shift that? So I'm spending a lot more time in the column doing stuff that energizes me. So
Mm,
that's the very first thing to do, is to get that awareness on where you are today, where ground zero is.
mm,
Then you can start to plan the route ahead. You know, what can I either eliminate or begin to minimize from the column that drains me, so I have much more oxygen and space to focus on the things that energize me. So that will be the very first thing I will do, because you might get a lot of insights simply from doing that activity.
yeah, I love that. I do I do something very similar with my clients and I call it an energy audit. And it generally mo quite often the people I do it with are those that have come that are completely overwhelmed.
Mm.
They're feeling really, yeah, like close to burnout, close to overload, all of those things, overwhelmed. And we always do an energy audit and it's kind of done in a similar way. So yeah, so I totally I do it for myself as well when I'm feeling a bit like that I'm a little bit, I always think a little bit out of control, quite frustrated with stuff. I sit down and do my own energy audit and you know what we were talking about before, it's like where are we putting into our life the things that we find joy from, the things that make us feel good because they naturally are our energizers. That always comes into play when I'm doing the energy audit. I think it helps us pick out those areas that we know, ah, yeah, I enjoy doing this and I'm literally haven't done it for 4 weeks or
Yeah.
whatever it may be. And we know that, yeah, that's got to come back more into my life.
So something else to keep in mind that I've observed and I work on with clients,
Mm,
is that the on average, the more ambitious you are, the harder it is to pull back and disconnect. That's
mm,
what I've tended to observe. Because the more ambitious you are, the more you feel like you have to be constantly in doing mode. And
yeah.
when you're not doing, you feel guilty.
Yeah.
or you feel that you're missing out or you're falling behind. And so to address that, I've understood that the harder you work and the more ambitious you are, the more you have to rest.
Yeah.
The
Absolutely.
amount you rest has to be equivalent, if not more, to the amount that you're in doing mode.
Yeah.
Because it is actually when you are disconnected where you have your most creative breakthroughs, where you have your insights, your wisdom, where your mind is able to connect all of these dots in your thinking.
Mm.
But if you don't give yourself that space, what's going to happen is you don't have that time to reflect and to pivot or adapt as necessary.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's the whole concept of slowing down to speed up, which is
Mm.
something I think you say and I say a lot as well. And I used to be this. I've been in property, and when I was in property, that was like my 80% of what I did. I literally was some days were so long, and I was just going, 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 and I was one of those people that just worked so hard, and I just never took my foot off the gas.
Yeah.
And I felt guilty if I did, a bit like what you were saying. I had all of those thoughts that I should be doing something, I should be doing more. And it's only through coaching that I've realized that, yeah, we have these amazing breakthroughs. Our brain can't get creative if it's full, if we're
Mm.
full on the gas all the time. All we're doing is creating resistance and friction. And so
Yeah.
when it's like anything, you take the foot off the gas, you get a chance to pause and to recover, and your brain gets time to settle. I always use the analogy of like dirty, murky water and our brain are very similar. When you have dirty, murky water, in order to make it clear, you have to put it aside and let it settle, and the sediment will fall to the bottom and the water becomes clear. The brain and the mind works in a very similar way. That
Mm.
when it's dirty and murky and there's a lot going on, and if you just keep going, you're just agitating it, and it's never going to become clear. You're not going to become, uh, you're not going to have all that clarity that you're probably looking for. But if we take a foot off the gas,
Mm.
if we go and do something we naturally enjoy getting out in nature, going back to basics, the mind and the brain will settle and it becomes clear. We get more clarity and we become more creative. And that's what I find from that concept. And it's worked for me, thankfully, in the last probably decade. And I
Mm.
definitely always try and recommend, yeah, to the high performers in the world that
Mm.
they get a little bit more of that in their life. I guess this whole series that I'm doing right now and talking to people like yourselves, I spoke to Rob Moore, I've had Claude Silver on, who I know you know. Um,
Fantastic.
oh, what a human! What a human! Yeah, I met her in London about 4 or 5 years ago, and yeah, just an amazing human. And these are all people that I see as high performers, which is, you know, why I asked you to come on the podcast as well. And I guess high performance gets a bit of a bad rap. And do you see yourself as a high performer?
I've never, if I'm honest, I've never really used those words to
Hmm.
describe what I do. Uh, I guess I'm always looking to perform at my best and to perform at a high capacity.
Yeah.
Uh, but I've always just seen myself as an eternal student because I think that, when I was at the beginning of my journey, I used to think that success in my entrepreneur life would be achieving certain accolades.
Hmm.
But as I've matured and as I've got older, for me, it's just simply being better than who I was yesterday and learning as much as I can every year because we're in this for the long term. And if you're not open to learning and redeveloping yourself and being open to new knowledge, you're going to be extinct very quickly.
Yeah.
And so for me, I just see myself as an eternal student. That's why often when I get asked, when people say, uh, you know, do you think you're at the top of your mountain? And I'm like, absolutely not, because I think that the moment you think you are at the top of your mountain, whatever that mountain is for you,
Hmm.
that's when complacency creeps in.
Yeah.
That's when complacency creeps, and that's why I think it was John Wooden that said it. He said in an interview, in sports, it is so easy to win that first trophy because you are seen as the underdog. There's nothing to lose, so you can go all out to win that first
Hmm.
trophy. The harder part is retaining that trophy
Yeah.
again, again, and again, and again. And that is why when you look at the likes of Roger Federer or Manchester United or Manchester City today, or teams or athletes that can win trophies again and again and again consistently, we admire that
Hmm.
because it is so rare. because usually when people win that trophy, they end up enjoying the success of that journey without continuing with the habits. And so that's why for me, in response to that question, I always say like I feel like I'm just getting started. And that's because every year I'm learning something new. So in 2022, with the publication of my first book, I was totally new to book marketing and how to get a book out to as big an audience as possible. In 2023, it's been a lot about speaking internationally. And in 24, I'm laying some foundation of doing some developments in AI and the metaverse. So creating Simon AI, creating a metaverse campus for my work. So again, I'm going to be learning that as a student. And I'm sure in 2025, there'll be another new technology or another new development in the world that will force me to be a student again. And so for me, I've never used the word high performer. I think high standards, yes. Perform to my best, yes. But no, I can see why people would see it as high performance though.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting concept, isn't it? Because I think generally that, people will hear those words and just think, that's like an exclusive club almost,
Yeah.
of people that have got, I guess, a lot of, like, if you think about Rob Moore, he's got a lot of wealth and
Yeah.
he's an entrepreneur, a very successful entrepreneur. Can't get my
Mm.
words out. Claude Silver, obviously, right-hand woman to Gary Vaynerchuk, but, doing she's a mentor to 2,000 people as
Mm.
part of VaynerX. And I think for me, it's about, like you were saying, waking up every day and trying to be a bit better than you were yesterday, and
Mm.
always that constant improvement. That there's always more to do, there's always more to learn, there's always
Yeah.
ways that I can be better. And
Mm.
I think when we're those kind of people, so that for me also falls into the brand of It Starts With You. I
Yeah.
think that's that's about high performance. That about us realizing that we can probably do more,
Yeah.
that we can probably be a bit better, and there is
Yeah.
always something to learn, and we never know it all. And I think that for me is more about high performance, but
Mm.
it's us doing the best of our ability, right? It's us.
Exactly. I always say that as long as you are consistently better than who you were yesterday,
Mm,
in time you will reap the rewards.
yeah,
The reality is that so many of us are not focused on being better than who we were yesterday. We're
yeah,
focused on being better than somebody else.
yeah. Oh
And
God, yeah.
so what
Oh,
happens is that we never fully access our potential
yeah.
because we're just trying to be a copy of someone else rather than the best version of ourselves. And
Mm.
so once we stop that comparison and actually focus on being better than who we were yesterday, then that's where we begin to move forward in our journey.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, gonna take that out of the notes. That is brilliant. We are, which is, sadly we live in this world, don't we, where we
Mm.
see so much. And even if you're not that way inclined, the trouble is we're bombarded with what everyone else is doing, how everyone's looking, and it can be very damaging. It's very damaging because it takes the light away from us as individuals and holding that mirror up to ourselves and going, hey, this is me, this is what I can do,
Yeah,
this is my uniqueness. How can I just continue to improve myself? But too often we were out there looking at what other
yeah.
people are doing and thinking, why am I not like that? Why me? Why them? Oh,
Mm.
what are they doing? It's
Mm.
a dangerous path. I feel.
This is why humility is so powerful and refreshing
Mm,
because ego says, why not me? Ego says, why aren't I having that? Whereas humility says, what can I learn from that?
yeah.
What can I do to improve? Humility is focused on improvement.
Mm,
Ego for me is focused on entitlement.
yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. No, the mic drop moment. I'm gonna grab that one. Right. I'm super conscious of time. I guess one of the final questions is really about you obviously speak a lot. You speak a
Mm.
lot about the book and everything. You've done a lot of podcasts as well. What's one thing that you don't get asked that you often wish you were asked?
Uh, Good question. I mean, for me, I'm always open to like questions that interviewers have for me because everybody has a different angle they want to go on or
Mm,
an area they want to explore. Uh, I guess if there was one area, is maybe more the personal side. That's the only thing I can think of,
mm,
because I think that helps inform who we are as humans. Um, yeah, that would be it. So I guess when questions have come around that, it's always been fascinating for people to learn a bit more from that side.
yeah, I think when we you know, when we naturally buy a book from someone, the author, and we see them on social, we want to know more about them, right? As a human, as a,
Yeah.
who are you, rather than all of some of the other stuff, right? It's like that's how we connect,
Yeah.
and I guess so. Who is Simon really? I know that you don't like prawns. Uh, and one of the questions I always ask, sometimes I do like three quick fire questions at the end, and one of them is your favorite food. And I
Mm.
know your favorite food definitely isn't prawns. So, what is your favorite food?
I, I'm a foodie, so I like all different sorts of food. As you said, as long as it doesn't include prawns, I'm happy.
Yeah,
But I generally eat everything. I have a bias to Asian food
yeah,
for obvious reasons. My background
yeah,
in Asia. But for me, as long as it tastes good, I'm I'm very simple. If it tastes good, I'll eat it, and I enjoy it.
yeah,
And for me, food makes traveling. If I travel somewhere, the
yeah,
food is great. The food options are fantastic. I'm going to enjoy that travel. But if it's not as if there's not as great options there, the food's not as nice as somewhere else I visited, then it detracts a little bit for me from the trip.
yeah.
For me, food is a big part of enjoying travel.
Absolutely. I love travel, and obviously you've been doing a fair bit of it this year, and sounds like you'll probably continue to do that. Is travel something that is on a personal level that you really enjoy?
Yeah, I mean, both from my personal and professional level. I mean, personally, because where I can, I take my wife and my daughter with me.
I saw that they went to
Yeah.
New York with you, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, New York. And so
Yeah.
they see uh, different places, experiences, and people, but also gives me the chance to meet people in person. So whether I'm
Mm,
in New York, Dubai, Los Angeles, Austin, Singapore, I get the chance to meet people in person. Uh,
mm.
and for me, that's how the best relationships are formed.
Yeah, no, food's a great way to have shared experiences and to connect with people, isn't it? So, well, outside of work and stuff, what else do you enjoy doing? Because I know you spoke before, like when you were in financial markets,
Yeah.
you didn't really get time to exercise and stuff like that. Is that part of something you get involved in these days?
Absolutely. Fitness for me is a non-negotiable. It's why one of the subtitles in the first chapter is called Stop Making Your Health a Side Hustle. Uh,
Yeah,
because when I made it my full-time hustle, when it was the number one priority, it impacted every area of my life.
yeah,
When you go for a workout, even if it's just a swim or a jog or some yoga, whenever you do some sort of physical activity, you never regret it after. And
no,
what happens is that when you have this uh, clarity, but also high level of mental thinking, the way you take on challenges that the day throws your way is vastly different.
mm,
And then it impacts your diet. You want to eat better because if you're working out and you're moving your body, of course, the natural benefit is you want to feed your body well. You want to fuel it the right way.
mm.
And so it just really influenced every other area of my life.
So, are you a gym type person?
Yeah, I'm a gym type and Barry's boot camp sort of person.
Ah, Barry's boot camp.
Yeah, Barry's boot camp once or twice a week. And then I mix that in with some weight training in the gym, cardio or swimming, cycling, and runs.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I will leave it there, Simon. Thank you for sharing a little bit about your personal life. We do know a little bit more than perhaps we did. So you're a foodie, and you're a bit of a gym buddy.
I'm even wearing a Gymshark t-shirt as we speak.
Oh yeah, that guy's done amazing, isn't it? Old Ben
Yeah.
Francis. God, what an entrepreneur he is.
Mm.
Wow. Yeah, incredible, incredible what he's done. Um, but thank you so much for coming and having this conversation and giving up nearly an hour of your time to be on my podcast. It's been a fascinating conversation. I wish you all the success going forwards in 2024, whether it's more AI stuff. I know we've spoke about that before, so I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes. And yeah, all the things that you do in the future. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me.
No worries.